This is the 20 Minutes of Influence podcast with your host, Greg Jameson. Influencer marketing is the process of identifying, researching, engaging, and supporting the people who create high-impact conversations with your customers. On each episode, I talk with industry leaders, business rock stars, and internet celebrities who contribute their knowledge about influencing others and growing your influence. Welcome to the 20 Minutes of Influence podcast. I'm your host, Greg Jameson, and I have a special guest with me today. His name is Max Keller, and Max and I have actually just met, but I'm really excited to hear what Max has to share with us today because he's going to talk to us about how you can use a book to create yourself as an expert in your field, in your niche. So welcome, Max. Super excited that you're here with us today. And why don't you tell our listeners a little bit more about yourself?
Yeah, great. Thanks for having me. Well, full-time real estate investor in Fort Worth, Texas. I was a math teacher before I got into investing. And so, probably, a lot of the business owners, I definitely, have, leads. We need leads in our business to make it grow. And so what I did, I made the transition from teaching to become a full-time real estate investor by, leads. I learned real estate. I learned how to go find, motivated sellers and started doing deals, started seeing it was a great way to make more active income and in addition to passive. And really, things are going, pretty good the first couple of years that I was doing investing. Probably around 2017, the market started getting a lot tighter. There was a lot more competition for the same people. And so I just sort of made two pivots in my business that helped me a lot. The first pivot I made was identifying who it is I actually wanted to work with. I was trying to work with everybody, and I felt like my message really wasn't resonating with anyone. I was going to people's houses and there was a lot of other investors there. And it was just very hard to stand out. And so my return on marketing spend, was getting lower and lower every month. And it was just taking more marketing dollars, to get to the same result. And so it was really frustrating. It felt like a grind, and kind of the whole reason I left teaching was to get out of the grind. So what I did is twofold. Number one is I made a list of who my ideal person was. Like if I got to pick everybody I did business with, and at the time, and still, I was fixing and flipping homes, wholesaling, some rentals, and a little bit of seller finance. And so, I made a list of what was important to me. And what was important to me is I made a good profit on my deal. My other thing was I wanted to work with sellers who are my customer that, there was minimal resistance to my offer. They weren't, just questioning everything, that I was doing. And then three, I wanted to have fun. That's the reason I got into teaching. I was a football coach too, and basketball coach. I liked helping people and I want to make money too. So what I did was I looked at who I had been working with up to that point. And I was like, okay, well, out of all these deals I had done, I was up to probably deal number 60. I was like, which of these three, fit, or all of them? And kind of two things happened. The first thing I noticed is that most of my deals weren't all three criteria. The other thing that I noticed is that the ones that did, you wouldn't have to be a math teacher to see the pattern. The niche was very, very obvious. And for me, it was senior homeowners. The seniors, my grandma helped take care of me. I have a teacher mindset. So I love working with these folks, and they needed a lot of help. They were living in their house for, 30 years, 40 years, maybe their spouse passed away, and they're not just trying to figure out how to sell their house, but they're also trying to figure out where they're going to move next. And so there are all these things to navigate. And so I was helping them and I was learning more. And that's what I'm saying about what helped me. I'm just speaking today from my experience, was really identifying who I wanted to work with, and then, getting better at that. And so instead of sending out a lot of just, do you need to sell your house marketing, messages where the return was getting smaller and smaller, I started sending out messages like, have you lived in your house a long time? You want to move, but you don't even know where to start. You know, are you thinking about moving into an assisted living facility, but you don't know what to do with your house? Are you taking care of your parents and you're not sure how much longer you can do it? And so I started focusing on finding, those folks, sending those messages. And that was like, so that was a big difference maker. I started listening to the needs that they had and learned how to help them better. And so I started to kind of be known as the guy around here that was, specialized in working with seniors. And so I was getting referrals from those people. And it was funny because I thought, Greg, that like by going more narrow and more niche, I was worried that I was going to have less leads and less deals and I was going to make less money. And I ended up actually doing a lot better that strategy. So that's what I was doing. And it's funny, a lot of the negative things that I was thinking or the worries I had were like all in my head. Like I was buying houses from seniors and sometimes my offer was $10,000 less than offers that they were getting from hedge funds or iBuyers and people online who were paying way more, but they were still going with me. And I couldn't figure that out. And because in my head, I was thinking, I always have to be the highest offer. I always have to be the highest offer. But it just wasn't true, but I didn't know why. So I called one of my sellers about 6 months after I had bought the house. And I was like, do you remember me, Max, Save Your Home Buyers? And they're like, yeah, I remember you. And I go, at the time you had told me, and I wouldn't talk to the mom. I talked to the adult son. He was like about, in his 50s. And his mom moved to assisted living. And I bought their house and helped her move into a new place to live. And I said, I think you said, I told the son, I said, I think you told me at the time, that you had a higher offer from someone else. Is that true? Did I get that right? And like, yeah, we did. I'm like, well, I'm glad you went with me, but I'm just curious, like, why did you take the higher offer? I mean, more money is good, right? And he said, it's because we trusted you. We felt like when you were at our house, you had a genuine, you generally cared about us. We felt like you not only wanted to help us with our house, but, you even like pointed us in some, some steps or directions that didn't even involve you making money. And so that sort of consultative approach, that sort of, being seen more as their trusted expert than just a salesperson really changed the whole influence game. And it was like, it wasn't influence because I was trying to push like the pedal down and just get more of what I wanted. It was just the process of trying to help them and giving them more value because I was becoming more valuable and getting those messages out created that trust and it created a lot more influence, a lot more deals. And so that was the end of the first step. And then the second part, which is real short, is that's where I actually got the idea to write my first book. Is I was at a motivated seller's house, and it was the seller and then their adult child. And the adult child said to me, like, you've helped us out a ton. We really appreciate it. And you know a lot about this. You should write a book about everything that you know. Because like if you did, I would read it and I would give it to people. And I was like, no, like I was a math teacher. I wasn't an English teacher, and we had a little chuckle. And, I was like, I'm a house buyer. I'm actually dyslexic. So the thought of writing a book was like pretty far fetched. But then when I thought about it a little bit more and I went to the car, I was like, that's actually a pretty good idea. If I could figure out how, which I had no idea how. And I've got a tool that I'm going to share with your audience here at the end of how they can get started if they've never done this before. They think it's far fetched. Remember what I said earlier? A lot of the things that we tell ourselves limiting, I found in my example, it's just things I told myself. They weren't true. I don't have to be the highest offer. I can write a book. We can do a lot of things. And in this market, to gain real influence and to gain market share, I think in any competitive market, how you reach people is huge and how they perceive you is super important. And so all I did was, it was real basic, is I just wrote down all the questions that people had asked me. And then I wrote, the answers to them. And I put some pros and cons and of each, solution. And I put it together. And, a few hundred hours later and many, many months of, toil, I had my first book, and it was called Home to Home, the Step-by-Step Senior Housing Guide. And I created a workbook. And it led to a lot of other things. It led to speaking in front of, groups of my ideal customer instead of just sending them, direct mail. It led to being pre-sold before I walked in the door. When I met these people, I'd send them a copy of my book. and the book kind of did the selling. It's like I didn't really create a book to sell. I created a book to sell me. And so the most, influence that I've gained in my prospects' eyes is I can hand them the book, and they immediately see me as the person who wrote the book on this subject. And in the way they perceive me, and they're at their house and they're reading the book and getting the answers to their questions. And that's 5 hours. I don't have to be there in the living room. So it's created all these huge benefits. And I never in a million years would have ever thought that. Now we have a lot more books, and we have some licensed content that we plug real estate investors into. But for anybody who's just running a business, just speaking business owner to business owner, writing a book has been the best marketing channel. And I've tried a million of them, but it's also just been a lot of fun. And so I think I would just say something to consider.
Okay, so you actually came across with a whole bunch of stuff there that I want to dig a little bit deeper into here on a couple of things. One is you talked about your ideal customer, which and niching down, which I think is huge in any business. That it's one of the things that I tell my listeners over and over again is that you need to have a niche that is a very specific niche. You might get other business deals going on outside of your niche, but by having that niche, you're really able to identify yourself as an expert in a particular area, and that's what's going to attract people to you. The other thing that you talked about was providing a whole bunch of information, being a consultant and giving people all this information for free. Again, any business, you really need to have that where you are. That's what helps establish you as an expert, is by giving away free information. And that free information might be just consulting with your customer. It might be writing things down by having a blog. It might be the things you post on social media. It might be having a podcast. It might be any number of things, but giving away free information to that niche market, to your ideal customer, is really the way that you start to become recognized as an influencer and an expert in your business. And then the third thing, of course, was you talked about having a book. So we've got kind of three different things to talk about here as we go forward. But let's start out with the first one about narrowing down your niche. You said you were scared to do that. I think everybody is. The reality is that when I started out and was designing websites for people, it was like, anybody that can fog a mirror, man, you're my customer.
Sure.
And the reality is that's not true. If you can say, hey, I work with local businesses that have a physical presence and they're trying to get an online store to supplement what they're doing with their physical store. But these are small business owners that are probably doing less than a couple $1 million a year in revenues, and they are attracting a local clientele. They really want to expand to a national clientele. All of a sudden, that's a much more focused niche than just saying, hey, I'm going to work with anybody that can fog a mirror.
100%.
I commend you on discovering that, I guess, with coming up with that niche. Was there a specific thing that really kind of triggered that, or was it just kind of something that happened for you?
Oh, yes. It was, I was about to quit the business because I was so miserable. I wasn't having any fun. I mean, I was making good money, but it was a total rat race. And it was because of the way I was generating leads. Like I said, I was sending out the same messages to everybody. I'm at these houses, there's 10 or 15 other investors. And I always feel like I'm interviewing for a job. I'm only as good as the next, deal. And so I was getting burnt out chasing people down. I don't really like that style. There's like hunting and trapping. And I don't like hunting people down and trying to get them to answer the phone when they don't want to talk to me. I like sharing my message, what I do, and then attracting the people to me that, see the benefit of working with me. And so, yeah, I was desperately looking for a better way to get leads. I was paying, I mean, I had every marketing system. I had, it felt like, not every one, but I mean, I had motivated seller websites. I was using bandit signs. I was getting every list that I could get my hands onto. I was getting those lists, and I was sending out a lot of mail, and I had door flyers. So I was trying all these different channels. And, you know, when you're trying a lot of stuff and it's not working like you want it to, you know, it's just frustrating. So it was sort of just out of frustration. And then, like I said, I was trying to like focus on, I don't know. I got so wrapped up into how many deals I was doing in real estate. I wasn't even thinking about like, well, maybe I could do like just as much profit, but with like half of the deals, you know, like, so I was in these masterminds, and I think I was just too busy trying to keep up with everybody else. And I wasn't listening to what I wanted and what was best for my family. And so I was miserable. My wife's like, why are you miserable? We're, you know, financially we're doing great. I'm like, because I don't like what I'm doing. She's like, well, when did you? I'm like, when I was teaching. She's like, well, why was that? And I was like, well, you know, I didn't worry about the money. That did change. I wanted to make more money, you know? So I was like, I still want to make good profit, but I noticed my deals weren't all the same profit. And I was like, well, maybe I could just get more of those. I started going through the book Profit First. So that's what made like criteria 1 make sense. And then the second one being consultative. I mean, it's just more fun to work with people that want to work with you. And when you truly help them at the end, you know, the money's great, but like, I want to go to work and have fun. You know, I taught at an inner city school. I taught the kids, that the forgotten kids, they were struggling in all areas of life. It is the greatest feeling in the world to go to work, help them learn something over, you know, days, weeks, months, years. And then they're so happy now. They have less stress. You're seeing them at the grocery store, you know, 4 years later, and they're like, I'm doing great in math now, all thanks to you. And then that like vaporized, you know, when I got into home buying, it was all numbers, and it felt really impersonal. And so that's why I made those criteria, but I think you just got to make them for yourself.
And you know, the thing that's interesting to me is that as business owners, we're all salespeople, but by all being salespeople, what that also means is we're all teachers. And if you are trying to sell somebody something because you're just trying to sell somebody something, it's never going to make you or the customer happy. If you're sitting here and you have this consultative approach, regardless of what you're selling, but you're really trying to educate your customer on why your product is a solution that they need to consider, then everybody ends up being happier. And you have this knowledge base about the products and services that you're selling that your customers don't have, which is really what establishes you as an expert. So you were taking that information. You said you took the questions that people were asking you, the questions that you asked them, and you just turned that into a book. Yes. So let's take a quick break. And on the other side of the break, let's actually talk about that process of converting your knowledge into a book and what it's done for you.
Sounds great.
Hi, I'm Greg Jameson, the host of the 20 Minutes of Influence podcast. Every week, I not only have the opportunity, but the real privilege of interviewing experts in their field, true thought leaders, and I get to share this information with you. The purpose of this is really to help you sell more of your products and services online, which is the core premise of my primary business, Web Stores Limited. At Web Stores, we go out and we create e-commerce websites for small businesses. Plus, we do internet marketing and digital advertising for those businesses to really help them sell more online. We have a whole number of resources and tools designed to help make this process easier for businesses, probably much like yours. I've been the author of several #1 best-selling books, including Amazon's Dirty Little Secrets and The Influencer Effect, plus a whole series of online courses if you want to learn how to do this stuff yourself. The best way to remain in contact with me, besides subscribing to this podcast, of course, is to simply go to gregjameson.com/free gift, where I have a special offer for you simply because you are a valued listener to this podcast. Thanks again, and now let's get back to today's episode. Welcome back to the 20 Minutes of Influence podcast. I'm talking today with Max Keller, and right before the break, we were discussing the whole idea of taking your knowledge and compiling it into a book. This is something that Max has done. People that have listened to the show have noticed that it's something I've done a few times here too. And it's something that I really feel strongly that every business owner, even if you are a vacuum cleaner salesman, if you are a gift store, if you are a plumber, whatever it is, you've got this huge knowledge base of things that are stuck in your mind because of all the questions that your customers have asked you over a number of years. And you can turn that into a book that, as Max talked about earlier, the book is not for the purpose of selling lots of books. The book is for the purpose of getting new customers. So tell us a little bit about that process, Max. What kind of time commitment did it take you? And how'd you go from having all these random thoughts in your head to putting together an outline or whatever and ending up with a book that you can hand people?
Sure. Yeah, no problem. Yeah, well, I made a lot of mistakes along the way because I don't have any, experience in this area. I actually came up with a tool that I'll give your audience at the end, which is we wrote it for real estate investors, but I mean it works for any business, and it's a book writing checklist, and we sell it, but it's free for the, we'll leave it up for a little while for people who are on your show. But essentially, what I did is I got with some people to help me pull together some resources, and it started with, identifying who I was speaking to, and that was easy. So step one is identify the niche. And then I knew who it was, and step two was basically just take a list of all the questions that I had been asked by the sellers. And then step three was just, answer the questions. And so I already knew the answers to all those. That was pretty simple. The next part was, create an outline and figure out where it was all going to go and how it was all going to be, put together. And I really probably should have done that at the beginning. And so actually, when I wrote my first book, I wrote about half of it. And then I had to go back because the outline wasn't there. And then when I created an outline of how I wanted the chapters to go and the flow, and each chapter was kind of like over a main topic, that's a system that worked really good for me. I put some calls to action in there about how I can help in the different parts of the content. But I focused the book on like 99% about what my ideal prospect wants to learn more about, 1% about me. A lot of things that I used to do in my sales copy and my literature and my brochures, I look back on it and go, oh, well, no wonder it didn't get great results. It was all about me. It was all about our business. It was all about our services. It was all about the benefits, but it wasn't really adding a lot of value. It really wasn't standing, on its own. And so once I took a different approach with a book, it allowed me to do that. I talked about in the book how we help people. And help isn't always us making money. And that was huge because before, when I would present options to people as a salesperson, all the options that I presented led back to me making money. And I felt like it gave the motivated seller the feeling like I was there to kind of help them, but they were sort of a necessary evil that got in the way of me getting more money in my bank account. But when I was there with my book and the way we structured it is like the book points them to like 30 different options, and maybe 2 or 3 of them point to me. And the other 90% are, a referral, right? Somebody I can refer them to, but I won't necessarily directly compensate from. And so I feel like that really made me be perceived as more of the foundational source and more of a trusted guide and a credible expert. Because before I wasn't really telling people who I don't help. That's an extremely powerful tool. I mean, right? I found that out later. Like, these are the kind of people that we work with. People who come to our fill in the blank store usually have these questions, or usually are at this step and they're trying to get here. Folks who are, XYZ, they're not usually a good fit for us. So by really like spelling that out in the book was huge. And then, I did the normal things people do. I added some case studies. People could read the stories and kind of relate to them, be like, wow, I'm going through that. An amazing thing happened. I would give my book to people and they had their mind made up about what strategy they wanted to use to do something with their house. And as the expert, and they didn't know me yet. And as the expert, flat out, I knew that strategy was not the right one for them. But it doesn't matter what I know, it's what they think, right? And they want to have a lot of choices. They don't like it when, people are just telling them what to do. I don't think anybody likes that, right? So that was cool to see the transformation, because they're like, I'd have somebody, I remember I gave a book to one guy, my mechanic here in town. And he's like, he called me because he knew I bought houses, but he didn't know I wrote the book on senior housing, which is a powerful statement. And so I said, have you gotten a copy of my new book? He said, no. And his mom was in a rehab facility and the house had been there just sitting vacant for like 6 months. And he's like, yeah, I'm pretty handy mechanic. So I think we're going to fix up the house and sell it, because then, we can get more money. Well, I know flat out that unless he has the time and the way construction is and all the details, that's most likely not going to be the right option for him. But if I tell him that, it's like if you tell a kid something, they want to do the opposite. I think it's called pendulum theory. And so I sort of did the opposite. I just said, well, here, I wrote this resource and it has all the mistakes to avoid. So instead of me telling him, you can read them and understand them for you. And he's like, wow, thank you. I gave him the book. It says $12.99 on the back. They can go online and buy it. The perceived value is very high. They're not getting books from a lot of the other business owners, actually 0 of them. So now they see me totally different, and they've been around for thousands of years. So and it's cool because it creates a physical anchor. I used to nail tomato stakes with signs that says, I'll buy your house, at all hours of the night in all these cities till my hands bled, to get people to call my phone. Okay. I definitely don't look like the trusted expert. And then the city would pull them up and throw them away. I was a nuisance. Now I have hundreds of bandit signs in people's living rooms, and it's my book, and I'm not in the junk mail. I used to be in the junk mail. I go over to people's house and they show me all the postcards they get from investors, and I'm like in the stack of mail. Now I'm on the coffee table with all the other autographed real estate books from the author, which is the only one. And so every time they get the remote, they're looking at my book. You know what I mean? So it's like, it's so different. So there's so many things we could talk about, but I created the outline. It was tough for me because I've never done it before. So I wanted to create a resource for business owners who either are contemplating. It only works for people who have some real industry knowledge. If their ideal customer came into their business, and asked a lot of good questions, they had the answers for them. And for people who want to do that, not everybody wants to put themselves out there and be the person to get, the questions and answer it. And that's okay. But for people who like that, they just want to do more of it, but they don't even know where to start. I got two words of advice. One, the good news is your competitors are thinking the same thing. So if you're thinking, Max, I run a business, I'm not a writer, great. You're in for good luck, because your competitors feel the same way. That's why they don't have a book. Okay. Yeah. And then step 2 is I've created this guide that you can get. I'll give you the details at the end. And it goes through the exact process that I went through after I had to learn it the hard way. So if you want to write your own book, hopefully it can speed it up. But it's not just a book. It could be for an ebook. It could be for just improve the copy on your website. There's obviously pros and cons of each. We don't have time for that, but considering this method of marketing made a huge gain in my business. I know it's done good for you and other, folks that, listen and colleagues. And if you're looking to try to change the position in the marketplace, how your customer sees you, and how to just sort of get the word out about you faster, I've never found a channel better than writing it's not a life story about me. It's not a memoir. It's a how-to lead generation book for our ideal prospects for our business. That's what we write.
And there's a few things that you said there that I want to reiterate. One is you were saying that the book is not about you. The book is about your customers.
Yeah.
That is, anybody listening to this podcast, people, that is so true with everything. It's what I harp on with your homepage of your website. The homepage of your website is not about you, it is about your customer. And that's the way your book needs to be as well. It's not about you, it's about your customer. And that's hard for a lot of people to kind of get over that. You know, it's like, well, I can do this for you, I can do that for you. No, it's not that at all. It is about your customer and the benefits that they're going to get by reading what you've written. The other thing that you talked about here is about how people are not writers, you know, and I deal with so many business owners that they feel very strongly that they don't know what to write at all. And the reality is that you can sit down and just think of, as Max said, all the questions that people are asking you when they come into your store. Let's say you have a kitchen gadget store, actually have a customer that has a kitchen gadget store. It would be so easy to write a book about kitchen gadgets, because the fact is everybody comes in and they have a problem, or they have ways of doing things, and they see a new gadget and they're like, oh, what's this for? And
Yeah.
you can just sit there and describe all the creative ways of using a particular gadget. People would eat that stuff up. Like you said, you have your book sitting there on the counter and somebody makes a purchase one time for whatever little thing. And by the way, here's a copy of my book. I think that you'll enjoy some of the other things that we talk about in here. They'll come back over and over again because you're now the expert. So let's take this whole process. So you have these questions in your mind. You know that you are an expert. You've got this knowledge. Did you physically sit down and write the book, or did you verbally express it and get it transcribed? Did you talk to somebody else and have them basically be a I don't know what you call a thing, not really a ghostwriter, but a co-writer with you type thing, where they are extracting the knowledge out of your brain and writing it down for you? What was the actual process that you used? And then did you have a publisher that was set up ahead of time, or did you self-publish this?
Yeah, great question. So kind of all of the above, went a lot of different routes. The main one, what got me to the destination the fastest was creating a really good outline. So I had, through, you know, some people I know in the industry and some people I reached out to and some books that I read, I put together kind of a framework of how I wanted the chapters outlined. And then I filled in the information by just, you know, speech to text on you know, Google Doc, and start filling in all the info, and then went through a revision process of sort of went back through it and rewrote it. And then I self-published, and then I incorporated. And well, this is the funniest thing, is that I wrote this book for my home buying. I mean, I'm not, you know, I don't even know who's a big business person, but like I'm a home buyer. I'm buying 30, 40 houses a year. We're doing great, you know, but it's like, I didn't intend for this to be anything more than just an upgraded business card that people went throw away. And then, so I went through a lot of trial and error. The hardest thing was the inside formatting, getting it looking really, really tight. Was hard to find somebody who could do that. Now we have a whole team and we've created a whole business around it. And I didn't even, like I said, I've never in a million years would have thought that happened. But as far as the creation goes, you know, all I can say is there's kind of two ways for people who come to our business or reach out to us on the real estate investing side. There's kind of two kinds of people. There's the DIY and the ROI. So the DIY in my investing space, they're the business owner. They're usually a solopreneur. You know, they've got their hands in all aspects of the business. They like to roll up their sleeves and get dirty. And it takes a little longer to get the ROI. You know, there's trial and error, but I think if people want to do that, there's like nothing wrong with that at all. And so we've created for real estate investors, but it works for a lot of businesses, the real estate investor book writing checklist. And it breaks down in detail, in more detail than we even have time for today, exactly how to go through this book writing process if you're a business owner, step by step. And so so that's that method. Is it okay if I tell people how to get access to that?
Yeah,
Greg?
absolutely. Yep, that's the next thing I was going to ask you.
Cool. Yeah. So all they have to do is go to dealschasingyou.com / Jameson, Jameson. And you can download a copy of it and see how we do the framework. And then the other way that business owners can get involved in writing books, people come to us, I call them the ROI. So for them, everything is just time is money. They want to buy speed. They want to get things, as quickly as possible. And they only focus on like the main income producing activities, which in my space is getting more deals and getting more dollars to, hold the properties and do deals with. And so for those folks, they can plug into some licensed content. And so instead of having to write 100% of a book themselves, depending on their niche, I know for real estate investing, we have some of those, but other industries, there may be some ways that you can plug into some licensed content that's a little bit faster, or you can reach out to a company that'll, write a book for you. We don't do that, but there's plenty of companies that do that. And so there's a lot of different ways you can go. I would just say this, consider whichever way it is to just, I think of our business and our life as like a ladder. And I used to have a bad habit of just thinking about like the big goal, and then it's very overwhelming because I'm so far away. So if you're listening to this and you're like, I like the idea of getting more prospects to just come to me, they're attracted to me. I like the idea of positioning as the true expert. Which, by the way, doesn't mean that you're a condescending know-it-all, right? There's a difference between an expert is somebody in my mind that's a teacher, an advocate, somebody who is really trying to help the other person win. So whether it's real estate or kitchen gadgets, if somebody goes into your kitchen gadget store and you got 4 kinds of blenders, right? And it's like 30 and 300, the person who's just all they care about is the sales, right? It's like maybe they're pushing them to the highest margin one, but the true educator and advocate is like, the reason the price is different is because there's pros and cons to each one, but it doesn't mean that everybody should use the cheapest or the most expensive. It depends. And so what is it that you're looking for? Here's the pros and cons of this one. Here's the pros and cons of that one. And then just let them decide. And so if you like that kind of marketing, and that's what we do in all of our businesses now, and it works for me, you can download a copy of that, but make the list of what the true steps are, the rungs in the ladder to get to that goal, and then just focus on the next rung. And it may be downloading this short ebook that I created. You can go through it and get a high level view. It might be reaching out and figuring out who your niche is. And you're like, man, I've been working with everybody. I don't think that is working as well as I thought. Whatever it is for you, just take that first step and, you'll get maybe even more value from listening to this than you've already received. I hope that was our intention. So I hope we did our job.
Okay, awesome information here today, Max. Really appreciate it. And anybody listening, I'm encouraging you to go grab the ebook that Max has just referenced to you here. I'll put it in the show notes as well, but it was basically dealschasingyou.com / Jameson. And like I said, that'll be in the show notes. Again, Max, really appreciate you sharing your knowledge with our listeners here today. And good job.
Awesome. Well, until next time, signing off. I can't wait.
Very good.
Thanks for listening to today's episode of 20 Minutes of Influence. If you enjoyed today's podcast, please leave a review on iTunes or wherever you listen to your podcasts. And if you are interested in booking myself as a speaker at one of your events or are interested in any of my coaching programs, please visit gregjameson.com.